Hello?
Hi, is this Kelsey?
It is.
Hey, it's Brianna. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Joy of cell phones, right?
I mean, it's like technology. It's like you have to have it, but it has its own brain. I don't.
Amen, sister.
So, first of all, thanks for reaching out to me and wanting to do this. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you, all right, let's start back from the beginning here, because I've never met you before, so I'm a little
Correct.
I don't know. This is my first one,
You're
and I'm
like, who is
don't
this
really know
girl?
them. Huh?
You're like, who is this girl?
Who is this person? But no, it's okay because I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love like-minded women that are go-getters and are nice
Yes.
and are hustlers. That seems to be a rarity these days in the horse industry.
It sure is. But I'll tell you what, between the tack business and the horse business, like there's days that I'm just like, I just can't do this anymore. I need to sit down and have a beer because I'm just worn out.
Well, it's, I don't know if you ever heard of Be More Media, but we do shirts and we do engraving and awards. We do embroidery too. We don't do tack. I'm not, bless your heart for doing tack. I'm not even, no. But it is like more, I think it requires more emotional intelligence and patience when you specifically work in the horse industry like you and I do. Am I wrong?
Patience is key. I mean,
It
it
really
is
is.
definitely a virtue. It
Do you ever
absolutely is.
have crazy situations like that? I mean, do you think it's more?
So I've had it on both ends, with the horse end and the tack end. I mean, the biggest thing that I've found right now with the tack industry is, and I don't know if it's the generation, I don't know if it's COVID related, I honestly don't know, but the entitlement of wanting it now and ordering it I'm I'm a one man show. I am a
Yeah.
custom pack maker. I cut all my leather. I do everything by hand. And it's one of those deals, like when people order, I try and go over everything as, intricate as possible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you got some
people
pretty
want
stuff.
it. Thank you. People want it now. Like if they order it, they expect it shipped the next day. And you try and stress, like I always tell people, it can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 12 weeks. It really just depends. And some of the things, like with conchos and things like that, some of those custom conchos, they're handmade and they take it might take 6 weeks to get to me. So that's probably the biggest thing that I have learned through the years is trying to explain the process to people and trying to, myself even have as much patience as possible because, it's a dog eat dog world. I mean, it really truly is. And people
It's gotten worse. And for how long have you been doing it?
so
Horses
I've
in
had the
general, like
tack
for a while.
for 10 years.
Oh, yes. So you do know. You've seen. So you can. Okay.
Absolutely. And, there's I know myself, whether it be the tack, the horse, whatever I get into, I really am a firm believer in doing it wholeheartedly and having the best product that I can make, whether it be animal, an animal like a horse or tack or whatever. I want it to be the best that it can be and that I can make it. So I really take pride in my work, and everything has a lifelong guarantee, and it's so funny because I had a girl, she had bought a tack set. She had it a year. I have no idea how she took care of it. I know myself, I am hard on stuff. Like the breast collar I show in is the breast collar I ride in every day. And I ride, 3 to 7 horses a day. So
Oh, wow.
my stuff has to last because I mean, I like all of all of my tack. It's funny. My husband laughed at me a few years ago. I had made like a local magazine cover for our local rodeo association, and I had a piece of baler twine like holding my mare's bonnet in place. And he's like, "My word, like you are a leather maker. What are you doing?" And I'm like, It's just a superstition thing with me, and all of my stuff is always like stuff that I messed up on or has a flaw or whatever, because I don't want to sell that, or it just happened. I still liked it or whatever. So, um, anyway, it's funny because
That's funny. No, that's funny you say that, because I do the same thing, like with embroidery. Like, I mean, I make mistakes. Trust me.
absolutely, you're human. We all make mistakes. Like,
Yeah, but you don't want to throw it away. Like for me, I'm like, this is a nice jacket or a nice vest, or I'm like, I don't want to throw it away, and so I end up wearing it.
absolutely. And I just sometimes I'll sell the stuff and I'll just put it out there like it has this flaw or whatever. But most of the time I just keep it for myself. And anyway, this girl, she had this tack set for over a year, and it was a crystal tack set. And let's face it, like crystals, they're tough. Like it doesn't matter how good you set them, you glue them, set them, this, that, whatever. You hit a barrel with that, the crystal can shatter, the rivet can pop off, whatever. Like it happens. Like, I mean, give me that plain Jane braided leather, because buddy, that's what I'm working with. But anyway, she had the tax at a year, and I guess a couple of the crystals had come off, and I just told her she wanted a refund, and I'm like, listen, like you've had it a year, like I'm more than happy to fix it. Just ship it back. Like you cover shipping and I will cover everything else. And let me tell you, like that was not good enough. Like she expected me to cover all the shipping, to fix the tax set, which I had no problem fixing the tax set. There was a couple of crystals that like the rivets had come off and things like that.
Yeah, but it's been a year.
Right. It's been a year. And like I said, she might have taken the best care of it, and she hit a barrel that day and, a rivet came unset. So, like that can happen. Or she might have been one of those people like me that, use that sucker hard every day and like whatever. Again, I don't know, but I'm telling you what, it got to the point that I told her, I said, listen, these are your options. Like I am more than happy to fix it, but you have to send it back and pay the shipping for me to ship it back out, because let's face it, just like everything in this economy, it's gone up. And she was like, no, I want you to cover all the shipping and cover all this. Like this, it shouldn't have fallen apart. And I'm like, it's not that the craftsmanship of it fell apart. Like this happens with crystal tack sets. And I even put that into my invoices. Like, things can happen. She went onto social media, like put me on like a bad tax seller, like all these things. And, at first it really bothered me, because I truly, like, I want to make that customer happy. But at the end of the day, the nonsense of like, I want it paid for and I want to send tomorrow and I want it fixed and I want you to overnight it back to me. And I'm going to call you at 7 a.m. and 9 o'clock at night because I want to know where my tax set is or if it's been done or whatever. Like the entitlement today, it's tough. So patience is absolutely a key to success in any business that you
I'm just like, hold on a second. Hold on. Pump the brakes. I am absolutely just mind blown that she contacted you a year later. I mean, it would be different if somebody bought a tax set and let's say a week later it started falling apart. That's a whole nother different story. But if somebody's had something for a year, that's wild. And I've been blasted too. And I think that oh, it really got
social
me.
media. I actually had listened to one of your podcasts the other day, and it was about buying and selling horses and things like that. And one of the things was talking about like Mean Girls and how social media has it's such a hinder in the business, really, because you can bend over backwards for people and you can sell 100 great horses or 100 great tack sets. But if there is one with one bad apple, that's the one that gets you every time, because people get on that keyboard and they want the world to know their story.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. And, you could probably relate to what I'm going to say. Like, running a business pre-social media, it wasn't like that. And it's like now people can just, you can say your opinion and say what you want, absolutely, but don't lie. Like, just don't blatantly lie. Like,
absolutely. And
you're hurting somebody's livelihood here.
Absolutely. And I will say, I like I told you from the get go, like I'm a one man show. Sometimes like I take longer than the tack maker down the road. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it goes. And it that has been a learning curve for me, just prioritizing time between, two businesses and my little one that's special needs. Like it can be trying at times, absolutely. But
whoa, special needs. Do you have a little boy or a little girl?
I have a little boy. He's 10. He has Williams syndrome, which is it's super rare. We had no idea when he was born anything was wrong. Like physically, everything looked fine. But let me tell you, he was the most miserable baby. Bless his heart. Like and I just kept saying to my husband, I'm like, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And like, I kept taking him to the doctor, and the doctor finally told me something was wrong with me, that like I had postpartum. And I'm like, listen, I'm happy to go talk to somebody. I will take medication if that's what you think, but like I'm not wanting to hurt him or myself. Like that's not how I feel. I'm telling you something is wrong with this baby. And he's like, oh, you're a first time mom, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of
you cannot deny that intuition. That intuition was strong. You knew something was up.
Yes. And when he was 4 months old, I had went to the beach with my family, my sisters, and I have 2 sisters and my mom and dad. And my oldest sister has 3 kids. And being around him, she was like, Kelsey, like, babies don't cry like this. Like something is wrong. And I broke down crying. I'm like, I know something's wrong. Well, long story short, I took him to a different pediatrician, and I just, laid it all out. I'm like, something is wrong. Please help me because something's wrong. And he said something about a heart murmur. And long story short, he got us in at Children's Hospital the next day, which right then and there I knew something was wrong. And Keaton had open heart surgery a week later. He actually had open heart on Christmas Eve, 2013.
Holy cow! That's props to both of you to be able to get through that. Like that's a lot of stress right there. That's not just your little doctor.
Let me tell you, it was stressful. Being a first time mom, like that's stressful in itself. It was stressful on my marriage. It was stressful on my mental health. Like it was extremely hard. It was extremely hard.
Well, you just hit on something, you just hit on something with the whole like medical industry. It's frustrating as a consumer because we're basically consumers, they're not God. To go somewhere and keep going somewhere and have somebody tell you it's you. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. But the whole time you're like, there's something wrong. I mean, that's frustrating in itself.
Absolutely. And I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, because we were kind of at each other's wit's ends because I was like that saying mama bear, let me tell you, like I was a mama bear. And, I said to my husband, I'm like, I don't understand why everyone thinks like I'm such a mama bear and I'm so crazy. Like dogs and horses and animals, they know when like their young isn't right. Why wouldn't we? And he thought about that and he was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like it's something, if you truly feel this way, like I don't know what to tell you, but the doctors are saying everything's fine. Well, anyway, Williams syndrome is extremely rare. Like there's there's 30,000 worldwide that have it, which you think about 30,000 and you're like, that's a lot. But if you actually break down like the population just in your town or your state, that's a very limited number of people. So it's not super well known. Like things could be so much worse. We're really blessed that he, for the most part, is healthy. I mean, he struggles with his heart and he has some developmental delays. But one thing with Williams syndrome, they are so extremely happy and outgoing, and like the empathy that he has, you will not, I can promise you, if you ever met him, you would never have met somebody like him. Like he is just the most He feels with every being in his body. And it's
That'll
just,
probably help him out in the long run, though.
yes. And like, he's super happy. Like, he literally, it's like, when we go to the grocery store, I laugh. It's like he should be like the mayor because he's saying hello to everybody and how is your day going? And he just wants to conversate with everyone. And that's part of his condition is, these kiddos and adults, they're just super, super outgoing. And like, he has no stranger danger. And like, that's one thing in the horse community. It's been nice. Because we are a tight knit community. Like, my husband had qualified for the American a few years ago, and we had went and spent 2 weeks down there. And let me tell you, we're from Pennsylvania, and we went to Texas, and we were at a barrel race, and we both were like, we always end up like a drag or two apart. So we're both on horses, trying to warm up, but trying to watch him, and he's playing in a sand pit. And this lady was like, listen, like, I'm happy to watch him. And of course, like, I mean, that was super kind of her, but I didn't know who she was. Like, I wasn't about to leave him, but it was just nice that our community is that way in one breath. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And we've had, at first the doctors told us he wouldn't make it to 5. And he's 10, he'll be 11 this year. And so he's definitely a walk. Yes, he is a walking miracle, but our local horse industry and community, a good friend, Peggy Long, had put a benefit on for him. And it was extremely touching and pretty amazing to see people come out of the woodwork to support him and us. Yeah. So it was a pretty neat situation in such a dark time. There was, happiness and joy that came out of it.
That's comforting whenever you're going through something like that or anything traumatic or challenging and stuff. To find out that other people are like there for you in a good way, that's comforting. That's enough to keep you get through something,
Absolutely, absolutely. Because there for a long time, it was like, who knows? I mean, when the doctor did the open heart, he had told us he couldn't believe that he had not had a heart attack at this point because he doesn't produce elastin. So as he grows, like his blood vessels and arteries do not. So it was like somebody who had like a 90% blockage that would typically go in for stents because they're going to have a heart attack. That's how he was at 6 months old.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Props to you, Mom, because like I would have lost it. I would have been like, "Oh God, what am I going to do?"
It was a tough time. I mean, I had a tough go. I broke my leg the day that I had him. It was just, sometimes when it rains it pours, but you just got to figure out how to paddle
God
through
looked at you and said, "You can handle it."
I guess. I mean, sometimes I'm like, holy smokes, like I just need a break. But yeah, it was definitely a trying time, and it was tough because he was such a tough baby because he was in pain, and we didn't know that, I didn't really ride. I kind of hung it up for a little while and focused on him. And, I've been lucky enough my parents are like fantastic. Like everybody says their parents are the best, but like, I really can't stress mine have been my rock through everything for my husband and I. And, they help so much with him, and they have such a great relationship with him. And that obviously helps me so much when it comes to our businesses. Because we have that support. They're about 2 hours from me, which is hard, but I mean, my mom will sit and FaceTime with him while I'm trying to pound out some tack in my shop, or on the weekends when we're showing horses. A lot of times they'll take him for the weekend, and we're just really blessed to have them and their support in our life too.
Now, I'm assuming you probably just grew up around horses, right? And your husband did too?
So my husband did, yes. He pretty much like cut his teeth on a saddle horn. I did not. It was something I always wanted. And my family was not into it. I was the youngest of 3, and I always had, my dad he is an entrepreneur, and he had always instilled that in the three of us. And from the time I can remember, I just always put money in the bank, money in the bank, money in the bank. And when I was in, let me think, a freshman in high school, I had saved enough to buy my first horse. I had been like leasing horses probably from the time I was in like, I don't know, we'll say fourth, fifth grade. And by the time I was a freshman in high school, that's when I purchased my first horse. And my parents took care of board and things like that because we didn't live on a farm. And every chance that I had, whether it be trail riding, cleaning stalls, I actually started out really, one of my very first jobs was I would go to festivals and like the pony rides. I was that girl that walked ponies all day long. And I can remember making, oh yes, I used to work at like local festivals for this lady, and
I bet they make
I would make
though.
I made $50 a day, and let me tell you, I thought I was like rolling in it, and I worked my butt off for that $50 a day.
I was fixing to say that you didn't sit down at all.
I would start at like 7:30 in the morning. I would go over and help her brush ponies and load them and get them ready, and I would walk all day long, and then I'd go back with her because I just loved it. That's what I wanted. And so when I was a freshman in high school, we ended up buying my first horse. My parents helped pay board, and then I got lucky enough. A good friend of mine, Jess Dury, her grandfather had pretty much taken me under his wing and kind of was letting me ride. They rode pleasure horses at the time, and I just kind of got to dabble in different things. Um,
and now you do barrels, right?
Yes, I rode hunters for a while, and now we barrel race, and that's my husband's. He was bigger into the futurity horses. Obviously, like when we had Keaton, life kind of changed and whatnot, but we have some really good stock coming up in the barn that we're pretty excited about. So we hopefully here in the next year or so, you're going to hopefully see good things from us.
So you guys.
But yeah, I just started, like I just wanted it, and I just kept going for it every way. And my dad and mom were super supportive, and my dad, it's funny, quick story. We partnered on a horse that was a $2,500 horse, and it was a 2-year-old, and put time on it and got it going. And I mean, heck, I didn't know what I was doing then. And we sent it out for 30 days, and I just kind of went on with them. And it was just, one of those things. God looks out for the dumb, and he watched over me for sure. And
hold on, I like that. You said God helps out the dumb. Is that what you said?
Yes, he watches over the dumb, because if I would do the things today that I did then, like I would be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, I think I've kept him busy many times in my life.
Yes, and so anyway, long story short, my dad and I were partners on this horse, and now he was my initial business partner, and I was probably a senior in high school at this point, and the horse he was just one of the good ones. He came on. I won a ton in the youth, some in the open, and we ended up selling the horse for like $15,000. And I was like, well, here's your initial investment. And my dad's like, oh no, like we're partners. And I'm like, but you haven't paid anything on this horse. Like, when I was in high school, I worked 2 jobs, and because I wanted horses, and this is what I wanted to do. And my dad's like, no, you didn't set the terms. Like, you didn't say I was I've just been a silent partner. Like, you never told me. So like half of this money is mine. And I remember being so mad, and just, that's not fair, and this and that. My dad's like, you have to set the terms when you go into business. You want to be a businesswoman, you set the terms. And he did put that money aside for me for college and whatnot. Like, it was not a big deal. He gave it to me anyway, but that lesson has stuck with me all these years, that the I's will be dotted and the T's will be crossed, because your idea and my idea in business might be 2 completely different things.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, that's a good thing that he took the time to teach you that, because there's some people out there that think they're doing business and they don't think about none of the.
Absolutely. I mean, my husband, I mean, he truly is a very kind soul, and he thinks that a handshake is a handshake. And unfortunately, this world just isn't what it once was. And as terrible as it is to think like somebody's word isn't their word, like, we've had clients that have, promised security horses or this or that, and the horse gets pulled for whatever reason, or the horse ends up going to a different trainer, or they decide they're going to run it, or whatever. And it's just like, at this point, like, you can only do it for so long before you're like, you know what, we should probably put it in writing.
So. Yeah, well, I mean, like, you just can't. I think that's what I was trying to say. There's so much about business, the dark side of business is what I'm getting at, that people just want to put on rose-colored glasses, but you can't if you just want to bend over for the rest of your life. Nobody wants to do that, so you just can't trust people. It's just reality. You have to do those hard things you don't want to do. I've had conversations and sent emails and stuff, and I did not want to do it, but it was what needed to be done because that's the other side of business. It kind of, it sucks, but like your dad
It does, and it's hard. I mean,
it is.
There's times that your clients become your friends, and when you have to have those hard conversations, it's like, how do I go about doing this without hurting feelings? But then it's like, you know what, like, in all reality, like, my feelings are getting hurt, or my livelihood's getting hurt because they've decided that they shouldn't have to do this because they've now become a friend versus a client. And that's a hard line to straddle, is that friendship client line, because, a good client does become a good friend over years and years and years. And it's hard to tell them how it is sometimes. And sometimes feelings do get hurt, and that's never the intention. That's one thing in my business. I, in one sense, really hold myself high with this, but in another sense, it's been hurtful to my business is honesty. Like, whether you're a good friend, a client, whatever, like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, if I think your horse looks a little off, or your horse is a little out of shape, or whatever, I'm going to tell you. If you ask, I'm going to tell you. And don't get upset if it's not what you want to hear. And even in the tack business, going back to that girl that had that tack set a year, like, she didn't want to hear, yes, I'll fix it, but you have to cover the shipping. Like, she just wanted to hear what she wanted to hear. And that was, sure, I'll give you your money back. You've had it a year and you lost a crystal on it for God knows what reason, but sure, I'll give you your money back. And that's this industry has just, that's one thing, in the Western industry and culture, like, I definitely myself struggle with that in business, is that, even with selling horses, like, that's one thing I want you to know: the good, the bad, the ugly. And sometimes that ugly outweighs that good. And then people are like, well, you don't want to sell me the horse. Why don't you just say that? And I'm like, no, it's not that. I just want you to know everything so you don't come back and say, hey, the horse was X, Y, and Z, and you didn't tell me. No, I want you to know we call her Sybil for a reason. So
yeah. It's like that old saying, my brain done went sideways. You would rather, or when you used to get whoopings when you were little, and I used to get whoopings when I was little, which was not a lot, knock on wood, I was a good kid. But your parents would say, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And
sure,
I can relate to that when it comes to business, because I hate having to be blunt and honest, and I hate having to do, you hate having to do some of the things that you have to do and say, but at the end of the day, you know that honesty, even if it's harsh or not, or they don't want to hear it, at the end of the day, they're more than likely going to trust you more than they would the person that just, kisses their ass or just says whatever,
Absolutely. And, that's one thing, like, it's been hard because you watch clients that you've bent over backwards for, and you have done absolutely everything for them to let them succeed. Because, when I have a client that succeeds, that's just the same as me, winning that first division check when they win it, because it's part of my program, and that's one thing, like, it's kind of like a round robin effect. Like, a lot of times, I mean, I've had clients that they didn't like what I had to say or how I said it or whatever. I hurt their feelings and they've moved on. But it seems that they always come back. And I feel like with honest, as long as you're honest, like they do come back. And if they don't, like it probably wasn't meant to be anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's a hard, that's easy for me to say now, but I promise you 5, 6, 8 years ago, that is not how I felt. Like I struggled when I would lose a client. And I mean, I would weigh that situation 10 times over and figure out why. And I wanted to know why. And sometimes you just don't know why. And it's just, you just got to roll on with it, whether that be maturity or just being in the business long enough or whatever. It's, it's definitely something I've struggled with and I've kind of come to terms with over the last few years is you got to watch out for you. And not that you're not not that you're not wanting to see others do well or whatnot, but your main focus has to be you before you put others ahead of you.
Yeah, well, like they say, I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people can get that kind of misconstrued, taking care of yourself. You can't help nobody else if you're not, take care of yourself initially. And then, I think any business hates to lose a customer, but like what you just said, sometimes you have to, if you know that you've done everything that you can and you can sleep at night, then there's nothing else you can do. That's it.
Absolutely. That's all you can do. And, I always say to myself, like, if I can look in the mirror at the end of the day and lay my head down at night, then that's all that matters. And, I've had people in the horse world, like I said, I didn't come from a family that was into horses. Like you want to talk about rock bottom, buddy. Like I knew nothing, like absolutely nothing. And I took in everything that I possibly could. And I've worked my way up and that's one thing. I'm not the best out there. I'm not the worst out there. And I always tell people like I've had lesson programs and, have given lessons and some of my kids and adults have gone on and, won the amateur at the BFA and have won quarter horse Congress and things like that. And maybe I haven't achieved that myself, but my students have. And that's one thing that's, it's just going back to the business end of it. It's really important to remember, like, you can't put all those eggs in one basket and you have to keep yourself going in order to keep everyone else going.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's funny you just said that because I've always thought as a consumer, like from a consumer's perspective, which we never could afford a trainer. Like I had to figure it out on my own and do that. I just back then you didn't
like
have.
Me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was just fixing to get at. You know what I'm saying when we say rock bottom. What the generation has now for the horse industry, they don't even know how good they got it. Because back then, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have Clinton Anderson, you didn't have Clint, couldn't hop on the internet and be like, yo, what kind of bit do I use for this or what? Why would
Absolutely.
You could figure it out on your own.
Sure, and that's that's one thing. Like I think back how I started, and I mean, I had one of the pony ride ponies that like I walked around. The lady that owned them, she let me use one for 4-H. And I mean, I wanted to be a barrel racer. That's what I wanted to do. And it was this little appy pony that had no desire to go fast. But I mean, I had a smile ear to ear and it took me like a minute and 10 seconds to run a gosh darn pull pattern. But like, that's what I was doing. And in my mind, I was getting it, and, now like I'm blessed. I have some nice horses and I'm really lucky. A horse that I actually got in last year to sell. Um, it's kind of funny how that works. As far as timing, I guess, in business, I had sold a horse and I had bought this mare and, this is what I do for a living. And I got taken on her and it was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible situation. And the mare had a career ending injury. Like it was a bad situation and the owner just kind of blew it off and was like, you didn't do a vet check and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this isn't how I do business, but it is what it is. But long story short, I ended up getting this horse in to sell for this girl. And like her and I, we just clicked. Like she was like a 4D horse when the girl dropped her off. She's like 3D 40, and the mare has never run any less than top of the 2D for me. She won like our state finals last year. I mean, she's been rock solid, rodeos, you name it. And I had 4 people come and try her, and she broncs for everybody. And it was like, what in the world is happening? Because she had never done it for me. And these people, the owners at the time, they were like, listen, we want you to have her. Like, and I wasn't in for a horse right then. Like I wasn't in that position to be able to buy, and they worked a deal with me. And it's funny though, because, going back to like the 4-H days and that pony that I started on, and now, I've been able to grow as a horseman and as a businesswoman and, a person in general. And now I've been able to take horses, like for instance, a horse that didn't work for somebody else has been great for me. And just being able to, grow with everything. Like it's a neat situation to see where I came from in a sense of not a horse related background or family or anything. And now I have some fantastic horses in the barn, and, it's just a neat situation. So,
Well, that's good. I mean, that just basically shows that you said, I'm going to do it, and you did it. So,
yes.
and
And that's one thing, sorry to interrupt you. That's one thing, like with this generation, you were saying how like these kids today, they don't realize how good they have it. And they really don't, because, and some of them I'm sure do. I shouldn't say none of them do.
right.
But like it absolutely, I mean, they're getting, $50,000, $150,000 horses that are just jam up, and they've got a trainer and this and that. And, that's one thing that this industry, like I'm interested to see where it goes with the up and coming, because
Well, just the knowledge that is out there, that
yes,
it's easily obtainable. It's like there's some things where, the period where you and I grew up, we could actually make the excuse like we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to find the information. But now
yes.
it's so readily available. It's almost like you should be.
And
at a
I will
different
say,
level.
like, one that I absolutely love, like, is that, like, Clinton Anderson, like, his methods, I think, are fantastic. And, like, the between the reins, and they're, like you said, you can get on YouTube, and there's so much knowledge readily available at people's fingertips today. And, it's definitely even, just being able to ride with other people. Like, I'm lucky my husband's done this his whole life, and he's been able to start some fantastic colts, and we have a very good client, 5L Farm, and he starts their young ones, and we were able to sale prep one for the Ruby Buckle last year, and he was the second high seller. And, my husband had 30 days, 45 days on him, and like he went out there like a rock star, because, the biggest thing is just being dedicated to your business will make your business succeed. And that's one thing, like with this up and coming generation, like you said, being able to find that knowledge online, and then, maybe just shooting out a message on Facebook, like, hey, like this is the issue I'm having, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, obviously, like the couch jockeys, like people say from the NFR and things like that. I mean, you're going to have that, but there's a lot of times, like between the reins and things like that, answer a lot of those things for these kids.
Well, I've always thought that to myself. I mean, it's got to be, I don't know if it hinders the training horse aspect of the industry or not, having so much knowledge out there. It's almost like, because, when I was younger and you went to a horse show, and I remember when I was little, I used to go up to like these people I admired and these trainers and stuff and ask them how to do stuff, and they wouldn't talk to you. Like it was hush hush. Like nobody told you how to do anything. You either paid to do it or, figure it out on your own. And it's almost like, I wonder if that almost hinders that aspect of the industry, having all of that knowledge out there.
I think that it kind of, yes and no. Like that's a double-edged sword question there, because yes, that knowledge is there, but unless you really know how to apply it, it doesn't matter if you have it or not, because you're not going to know when to use it. So I
Yeah.
still do think that even though the knowledge is out there on the internet and social media and things like that, I still think having like that set of eyes in the arena watching you and coaching you, I always tell like my clients that, one of my rules is you have to ride every week with me. Like if you're going to take lessons with me, it has to be weekly. It cannot be once a month, every other week, whatever. You play soccer, you play basketball, anything like that. It's a 5 day a week deal. You don't go to your coach and say, well, I had this going on and that going on and so on and so forth. Like they're going to look at you like you're crazy. It's no
Right.
different in the horse world. Like you want to be great, you better dedicate yourself to it because you can't learn. And that's one thing, um, like my husband's a farrier and he also rides. And this time of year, he takes in a lot of training horses. And mainly, like right now, we've got 6 or 7 2-year-olds in the barn. And we have a girl coming in and she's kind of doing an internship deal. And she like he told her it's a 3 day in a row deal. Like you either come, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, but it's got to be 3 days in a row because that's when you see the most progress. And there's been a couple weeks like things just didn't work out. She lives like an hour or so from us and she has said numerous times like when she's missed, you know, 2, 3, 4 days, whatever, a week, she can't believe in that time, like the progression that has been made. And that's one thing, like back to what you were just saying, even though all of that knowledge is out there, like I think that's one thing that it is a little bit right now is like, kind of forgotten about is that trainer being able to coach, being a coach to your
Mm-hmm.
kid or whatever, or yourself, I'm lucky enough. There's little things that, before I used to kind of have a chip on my shoulder towards my husband. He's 12 years older than me. And I was like, well, I worked at Empress Arabians, this national renowned Arabian farm and blah, blah, blah. And I did this and it, it was kind of like I had like entitlement that I was just as good, but years of knowledge and hands-on experience is better than anything that I could have read. And now, like, it's such a blessing having him right at my fingertips because just the other day I was riding a colt and I said to him, I'm like, she's, she's just doing this. And like, I just feel like I can't get her body to work the way I want it to. And her front end's here and her hind end's there. And he's like, why don't you just try this? And he's like, she's not doing X, Y, and Z because you need to do X, Y, and Z to get her prepared for that. And yeah, like I had the knowledge of what to do, but I just couldn't apply it right. And that's one thing, like, I guess my answer to your question there was yes, I do think all the knowledge out there is fantastic, but I also think that it's not always applied correctly. And that's where I think like this business, as far as the horses, comes into play. And having a good trainer that can coach you through it.
Yeah, because horses it's not like softball or basketball. It's not like working out at home or, I mean,
Sure.
You're dealing with another living, breathing thing. It's a whole lot different.
Absolutely. And, one day they come out and they ride fantastic. And then the next day it's like you took 15 steps backwards. So
And they wonder why people call horse girls crazy. I mean, we're really not crazy. We're like, it's the only sport, literally, it's like the only sport that deals with another living, breathing
I mean,
thing.
you don't like, no matter what your passion is, you dump your heart and soul into it. But like with horses, you're dumping your heart and soul. But really to have that competitive edge and be that competitor, you need that horse, your partner, to dump their heart and soul into it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of the difference between, well, what do you prefer? Do you have a preference as far as gender is concerned? Like, do you prefer mares or do you prefer geldings or do you like?
So it's funny you asked that. I've had geldings that have won and I've had mares that have won. Um, I myself don't really have a preference. I've had good of both. I know my husband, like he prefers a gelding. We both actually have 2-year-old stud colts in right now. Both by the Goodbye Lane. His is out of Honor This Nonstop that Jeff Garner owns, and mine is out of C4 Dark Patch Patsy that 5L Farm owns, and um, they're both, like, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but they're both phenomenal bred colts, and we had contemplated keeping them studs, and my husband's colt, like, he just does not have the mind for it. So he needs to be a gelding as soon as possible. And mine, he's much more level-headed. And right now, like, if he can hold it together and become a great athlete as a stud, fantastic. But studs are hard, plain and simple, and not every horse deserves to be a stud. But as far as getting back to your question, as far as that goes, I've had success on on studs, mares, and geldings. Um, I, I honestly, it doesn't matter. I think if they have the heart and the willpower, it doesn't matter. But I know there's a lot of people out there that prefer one or the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of like stipulations to them, and I'm like, these aren't true. Like, you just have to go by the horse. It's not.
Yes. And one thing I feel people have gotten caught up in is I want a mare because if she gets hurt, I can breed her. But just like a stud, I mean, not every mare should be bred, in my opinion. And I know myself, like, I've had 2 mares, one that I had talked previously about in this conversation that I had bought that had a career-ending injury that wasn't disclosed, and she was so crippled, she would have never been able to carry a foal. Like, she would have foundered on that other leg, and it would have been a bad situation. So, like, right there, she was an Eddie Stinson daughter. I mean, she was phenomenal, but she couldn't be bred.
That would tie along the lines of a moral decision there, like an ethics
Absolutely,
decision.
and that was, she unfortunately had to be put down because of it, and that was a tough situation because it was like and that was one thing the vet and I discussed, like, she could potentially be a broodmare down the road, but, like, is that fair to her? And it wasn't. And I had another mare that we had raised and I had rodeoed, and, she was my heart horse and I loved her, and we had a lot of success together. And unfortunately she ended up with a coffin bone, infection, and kind of the same thing. Like, that's like, we could probably save her to be a brood mare, but, like, at this point, like, that mare owed me nothing, and she didn't deserve to have to live in a stall the rest of her life and make me babies because I wanted that from her, and I know a friend of mine, like, they had their horse insured and she'd gotten hurt and they did everything. Come to find out a year later when they went to breed her, like, she didn't even have ovaries. So, that's one thing with mares. That's possible? I guess it is. I guess it is. I had never ever heard that before. And, yeah, that was a thing with her is she had them, but they were, like, teeny tiny and they weren't producing anything. So, like, insurance had saved this mare because they said, well, you can breed her down the road. And that wasn't the case. So that's one thing I feel personally is a misconception in our industry is, oh, if it's a mare, I can breed it down the road. But, if there's a gelding that is just as good and has more heart than this mare over here, I would not be worried about breeding it down the road. I would buy that gelding all day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I like. You just see different memes and different people say. People are like, if we don't like a mare, then go get a gelding. Or if you don't, well, I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy geldings and some calm. Like, I've seen all of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I don't mean to say all of it like that, but you've seen both aspects of it, and you're like, okay, y'all. Like, it's just not. You just got to go with the horse that because you can get just as much heart from a gelding as you can a mare.
Absolutely. And, like, my husband, all of his success has been with geldings. Like, he had a gelding, like, he ran the he was top 5 and top 10 at the BFA and the Derby. And, that gelding was just his freaking nature, to be honest with you. He went on and won with, his his family, had the chance to ride him a little bit. He won with me. I mean, he was just one of those horses. It didn't matter who sat on him. He won, and he was just he was a Calbred gelding that went on to win at the top level.
Now, I don't know much about the whole breeding part, but you just touched on something that I want to ask about. Now, in the barrel world, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously I don't know anything about barrels. In the barrel world, I've seen a lot of people talk about Calbred within their programs and, and the horses that they breed and stuff like that. Why would Calbred matter when it comes to barrel horses?
So, this is probably going to be a touchy subject for some of the listeners. Some people love cow horses and some don't.
Yeah.
I personally think that this industry has become so, with all of the technology and the availability to be able to, for instance, do ICSI. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can pick it. Like you can have these embryo sets if you're going to have them there, or stud and all these things. And it's become such an elite sport as far as the breeding end, because you're breeding great barrel horses to great barrel horses that people will say, oh, well, this cow horse can't compete with that. And yes, some cannot. But yes, there are some very talented cow horses out there that, you breed them to a top barrel sire and you're probably going to get one phenomenal athlete. Like, at least in my opinion. Do I think that, years ago you could take just an average horse and make it a barrel horse and be competitive? Yes. Those days are gone, in my opinion, to be able to compete at those top levels. Like you have to, you do have to breed to the best, because that's just, it's just like, you or I have a child and Michael Jordan has a child, like his child's probably going to be tall and athletic and be a basketball player where ours might not be. It's the same thing with the horses. Like you breed that top athlete to a top athlete, you're going to get an athlete. And that's one thing. I think it just depends, like actually the mare that I'm running right now, she is Calbred. She goes back to streaking 6 on the top side, and bottom side, she's all cow. And to be honest with you, she's something I would not have ever looked at. I would have turned my nose up to. Like, I'm being completely honest. Like, she was not my style horse whatsoever. Like, she's kind of common headed, just common. She's a solid bay, and she's not bred the part. But let me tell you, that mare will run her guts out for me, and she gives me her heart every time. And to me, that's a horse down the road. Would I like to breed her down the road? Absolutely. But I would be very particular what I bred her to. Like, I would want to breed her to, one of the top barrel studs, like Jail Dash to Heaven, the Goodbye Lane, something like that, just to be able to give her that little extra edge that she probably will need for her foal to be that much better.
Well, don't you think that, I think more people are realizing that there is some talent that you can tap into when it comes to the cow horse that can be usable in all these other disciplines that you wouldn't normally think. You've got horses out there on these ranches that work tenfold circles around some of these, that athletes that people are used to thinking a horse to be, but there are horses out there on ranches that just could go all day long. Imagine tapping into that.
Well, and that's one thing, when I myself am looking for a horse, I look for obviously conformation, pedigree, and obviously, looks, colors, that always sells. Now that's like the last thing I look for, even though like I'm a sucker for a Palomino or a gray. But at the end of the day, like conformation beats everything for me. And that's one thing, like with these cow horses, that they tend to really, that's where they, in my opinion, their athleticism comes from their conformation. They're short hocks, they're short backs, they're catty, they're all those things that we look for in an athletic horse. So yes, like obviously Yellowstone, like, I mean, heck, those rein cow horses that they had on there and the reiners and the cutters. I mean, that's one thing I've never been able to dabble in. My husband has, and that's one thing I would love to do one day is rein cow horse. But um, I just think the cow horses, like we had a stud horse years ago. My husband had before we even got together, and he was a double sugar bars bred stud, which is goes back to the cow horses. And people would joke, "Oh, he's a cow pony," but let me tell you that quote unquote cow pony put a ton of 1D barrel horses on the ground at all levels.
They are tough.
Yeah, and that's one thing, I feel like years ago, like you would take that horse and you would run it in barrels and poles and another barrel class and so on and so forth. And now, we run one class and we roll our time into these other classes because we don't want them to have to make another run, or we don't want this, or, God forbid they bleed or this or that. And, is it we've bred that hardiness out of them? I don't know. But like, I'll tell you what, like you said, some of those ranch horses and cow horses, I mean, they work all day long and they love their job, and
well, you just made me think about something. You don't hear about those people doing Lasix or bleeding or any of that type of stuff, which not that they're running like barrel horses or pole horses are running, but they are working hard. I wonder if it's just a matter of the work on their body is a difference.
I don't know. Like I've had some bleeders, and I've had obviously horses that haven't bled. And is it just more something that is known now than it was before? I don't have the answer to that, but it's definitely something that I find interesting. And I know myself in my program, like that's one thing, like if you send me a sale horse or a horse in training, like that sucker is going to have its ass rode off. Like, I mean, that is one thing, like they're getting rode. You're not paying to have this horse stand in the barn. Like that sucker's getting rode. And, especially with like training horses and sale horses, like my husband always jokes, like I always do better on those horses than my own because I love on my own. And he's like, your training horses and your sale horses, they respect you. They know it's this or it's I'm going to get looped into the ground or whatever, and that's one thing, like the mare that I'm running now, I had some success on her and I was like, oh, I love this mare. And, here, have the MagnaWave and let me beamer you and let me put your magnets on and like all these things. And she's like, I got this girl wrapped around my finger. And I gave her some time off this winter and she came back and she just kind of half-heartedly was going through it. And last week I was like, listen, you heifer, you best get your head out of your butt because I'm not liking being, in the second division. I want to win again. And, I kind of put it back the ball back in her court. Like, you want to go back to being worked hard and every single day and whatnot until you step up, that's fine. And I really worked her hard last week and it paid off. She went to the barrel race and she was second in the open and, she did a good job. But that's one thing, like, it's hard to, again, like we talked earlier, that straddling that line of client and friendship, and same thing with your horse. I mean, they're your partner too, and loving them versus them respecting you. And, it's, you got to have that respect first.
That's what I was fixing to say. It's probably, I bet you, I don't want to say winners, but in order to be successful, well, just like you just said it yourself, not that you do more for your client horses, but that's your business part. So you make it business. You take the emotion out of it, and that's why they not necessarily do better, but you know what I'm getting at. So
they do better.
In order to succeed, you have to take that emotion out of it. But we just talked about this last time. It's hard to do because you're right. You love them and you don't want them to hurt and stuff, but you got to get rid of that.
I always tell my husband, I'm like, I just want a dumb horse. Like I just want a dumb one that I can just, they're just like, oh, she's here to ride me again. Woohoo.
No, you probably wouldn't like. I get the feeling you probably wouldn't like it. You probably, because the smarter they are, it seems like it's more challenging for me. But
A few years ago, one of the top owners in the barrel horse industry had sent me a 2-year-old to get going, to get broke and whatnot. And it was going to go to Troy Crumrine after me. And I was like, almost like that kid with stars in my eyes, like, oh my gosh, like I'm getting this opportunity. And I made it so much more like mechanical, and the horse had to do this. And instead of just going and doing it and putting that saddle time in and letting the horse come together, I almost forced everything because that pressure was there. And, I look back now and I'm like, man, I wish I would have just done me, like I think I had said to you, like one of my slogan for Chrome Girl is don't hate my hustle. And it really applies to my life in general because that's, that's it. Like you just got to do you. So,
well, what I think probably one of the hardest things I've dealt with, you might have dealt with it too, is I don't want to say the word jealousy, but I just want to say like,
oh good God, yes.
well, it's a touchy word because I don't view myself as having anything to be jealous of, and I don't really worry about other
Sure.
people. But you do have those people out there that literally come out of nowhere, and they just hate you. Like there's absolutely nothing
So
you can do about it.
it is so funny that you say that because a friend of mine and I were actually talking about one of your podcasts and how this girl, the girl that you were talking to, she was saying how like there's mean girls and how like they've made these Facebook groups that like just it's like a group to specifically
They
hate
exist.
her. Yes, and it is true, and it's so sad. Like it is so sad. And my girlfriend was like, listen, I'm just waiting for the day that there's like a Facebook group that's like, I hate Kelsey Grow or we hate Kelsey Grow. And I was like, are you like, at first I was kind of like, seriously? And she was like, people, people do like, they love to hate you. And I hate to sound like, oh, I have all these haters because it's not really
Right.
haters. Like, like I had said earlier in this conversation, there's times that I struggled with things, whether it be clients or this or that. And that was one thing, like for years, I'm like, why does this person like, why won't they say hello to me? Or why do they not this or whatever? And that is actually kind of how Chrome Girl, that slogan, don't hate my hustle. Like I started putting it on t-shirts and it said, don't hate my hustle. And it had a peace sign. And, it was that exactly. Like you don't like what I do and you don't like me. That's fine. Like that's you. Don't hate my hustle because you're miserable with what you're doing. And
Right.
that was a hard pill to swallow. Like that was a hard because I'm very much a people pleaser and I want you to like me and I want to like you. Like and it was very hard for me there for a long time and it was like I had even said that, like, I've lost friends over the years for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
it comes down to that exactly. And I hate even saying it out loud. Like, it comes down to jealousy. And just like you just said, because I feel this way, like, I had said this to my girlfriend, and I said this to my husband the other night, like, what are they jealous of? Like, I work my ass off to have what I have. Like, and it's exhausting. But it's that whole facade of social media and things like that where from the outside, like people are like, oh, she has a farm and she has a husband and she's this and she's that and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, yes, I'm very blessed with the life that I live and the life that I have. But
Well, and I think that it's usually people that don't want to look at themselves, so they have to find something else to pick on or bother or exert those feelings towards something else, and you just that ends up being a target. And it's just like for me, it's not. And I always feel weird when I say this. It's not that I want people to like me. I would love for people to like me. It's the fact that I am attached to my business, which is attached to my livelihood. That's why
yeah,
I don't like to have to drop.
you are the face of your business. And like,
Right.
you can't, I mean, I know like years ago, like, when I was like 22 and I was in my mind, like hot shit and doing my thing and whatever, like I made those mistakes of going to a horse show and it was, a weekend long deal and maybe drinking too much and just having a good time thinking I'm having a good
Right.
time. But everybody else from the outside is watching and judging and going, well, I wouldn't send my horse there. Or I wouldn't want to buy from her. Look at her or whatever, like
Right.
whatever. But that's exactly it. You are the face of your business. So you have to care to a degree what others think because you are in the industry of people. Like that's how you make your livelihood is through people. You don't go clock in and punch a clock 9 to 5. Like you have to, in a sense, be a people pleaser to a degree. And
Just made me think about something. Are you selective with the horses that you bring in, or do you just take in anything? Like
I'm selective. So
Okay.
I don't take any outside horses to break. Like that's not my gig. My husband does that. But same with him. Like he's built himself up. He has a reputation and whatnot.
Right.
And he's been lucky enough that he has some nice horses in right now. And as far as training horses for myself, like I try not to take anything that has like dangerous qualities, like something that rears and flips or things like that. I mean, obviously that happens sometimes and as much as I try and censor what I bring in for myself, like it doesn't always happen. I'm lucky enough. I have a pretty good clientele that, they get new horses in regularly and I kind of get them started and we go on from there.
Yeah.
But my main thing with the horses is probably more consignment horses than training horses, just because I've found that's probably my best gig. And that's one thing that I am really particular on what I take. Like, I don't want a horse that has an issue, like going in the pen or running the rail or something like that. Like, I want good, solid horses that I can match with riders that are going to go on and have a good, solid career and change so much. And here, I don't know if it was all the COVID money or what had happened, but I mean, hell, like it was amazing through COVID and everything. Selling horses, like you would have thought that it would have fallen off the map, but it was booming and the horse prices just got crazy. And that was one
They
thing,
really
like,
did.
yeah, and it was crazy. I mean, like, it was just crazy. And that was one thing, like, I really tried to stay as true to the industry as possible was just because prices have inflated right now, I still want to sell you that horse for what I feel it's worth. And whether they're inflated today and they drop down tomorrow, that horse is still going to be worth what you paid today as it will be 30 days from now or whatever, because I might be able to hook you for 30,000 for a horse that's a 2D, 3D horse and not that great. But if you're not getting along with it and you come back and you expect to get that money back, I might not be able to hook another person. So it's really important to me to like value that horse for what it's truly worth and not or what I feel it's truly worth, I should say, and not what the, you know, integrated prices are right now. And
Well, I was fixing to say that's probably a thin line to pull horses into that aspect of the economy because so many people still, I don't want to say hobby, but it's a luxury hobby. It's a luxury sport. It's not,
sure.
but it's still kind of like a thin line of does the inflation really even affect the horse industry like it would everything else as far as horse prices are concerned, not necessarily gas and things of that nature.
Right. I do think like the buckles, like Pink and Ruby and those things, I think that has changed, the average horse versus like we touched on earlier, like with the breeding end of it and stuff. Like, yes, you can't, some of these horses, like when you're breeding to a stallion that has a $10,000 stud fee, obviously that baby, when it hits the ground, is not a $5,500 horse, like,
So hold on. I don't mean to cut you off. Are those worth it? Like, is it worth it to invest into those things? Because I see them everywhere.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it depends what you as a rider are doing. Like I myself, my husband and I, we do have pink and ruby buckles in the barn. Um, and I think if you are doing it the right way, like you're paying them in when you should be and not paying them in and then you have to pay like the $3,000 late fees versus the $200, yearly payment and you can
Right.
go to those and get in the money, absolutely it's worth it. Like if you're not going to like, for instance, like we're in Pennsylvania, so driving to Oklahoma, that's a drive. Like no
Yeah.
doubt that is a drive. But if, if you have one that is a standout, it is absolutely worth doing. Um, but the average Joe might not want to drive to Oklahoma, and they just might want that solid 2-deer that they can go to their local horse show, their local MBJ or IBRA or whatever, and be competitive because the caliber of a 1D horse at the Pink Buckle is going to be a little bit different than what it is possibly at your local 1D barrel race. And, back to the buckles and things like that, like, yes, I think it's an investment into your hobby as far as if you sell that horse or things like that, or if you do plan on
What your
hauling,
end
like,
game
yes,
is.
yes. And I think you have to be honest with yourself with that. Like, I see a
Yeah.
lot of people that buy them and they're like, oh, I have a Pink Buckle horse, but they're never going to haul to Oklahoma. So for them to have it, I mean, is it a status thing? I mean, heck, I don't know. But I myself, like, we have, I'm trying to think, 4 or 5 right now in the barn. And yeah, like it is an investment every year, keeping them paid up and things like that. I mean, it's $400 a horse every year. And, you times that by multiple horses, it does get pricey. But if those horses are what we feel that they will become, it's absolutely worth the investment.
Yeah, but yeah, like you just said, you're going to get a return on it because you're doing it for the return on it. Whereas some people, it probably is just a status thing at this point.
To like being paid in versus being eligible for. And that's when you're buying a horse, those are important words to focus on.
What is the difference? Now you done got me all like, what do you mean eligible? You can't just take any
Okay,
horse with a pink buckle.
so Pink Buckle, you have until Pink and Ruby, you have until they're 3-year-olds to pay them in. And there are like different things that they offer, like the Pink Buckle came out with I think it's called the Premier Pink, where the horse can be any age. It costs $3,000 to pay them in, as long as they have never been paid in before, so on and so forth. So, when you're buying a horse and it says, okay, this horse is eligible for Pink and Ruby and Future Fortunes, for instance, we'll just say those 3 things, and the horse is a 3-year-old, well, you're going to have 3,000 to pay them into Pink, 3,000 or 2, it's 2 or 3,000. Don't quote me on that. It's 2 or 3 for sure to pay them in with the late fees to Pink and into Ruby. So you're going to have anywhere from 4 to 6,000 into paying them into those things because that person selling them didn't pay them up. So to me, I find it frustrating, to be honest with you. And I don't look at those horses because if they say we'll just say, 16,000 for this 3-year-old that is loping the pattern and it's eligible, well, I'm going to have $6,000 or $4,000 to pay it into those things. So to me, I'd rather
Yeah, you're
look at the
20
horse.
grand in it.
Yeah, I'd rather look at the horse that's, 16,000 that's paid into these things and is either at the same spot or maybe a little behind or a little bit ahead. I'd rather go with that one because to me, it was a responsible breeder and owner that paid the horse into those things. Where this other horse, you're in the hole right off the bat because you got to pay it in.
Yeah, because it's not like it's not like you're guaranteed to get any type of return on it unless you're going to have to run the horse to sell it. So,
and a lot of people, they don't understand that, the horse is eligible until it's 3. Once it turns 4, unless you do like the Premier Pink, like you're not even eligible to put it in Ruby Buckle any longer.
oh wow.
So that's one thing, like when you're buying horses, like eligibility and paid in are two different things.
Well, yeah, you just taught me something because I've seen it and I've looked at it. I've had customers that are all about it and all that kind of stuff. I've done work for people that have horses in it and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, what are you talking about? Because I don't really know, and I've
Yeah.
just seen it just keep growing and everybody keeps talking about it. And I remember a little bit, at some point in time last year, I think a lot of girls, I kept seeing posts where, women and stallion owners were complaining about how much it costs to be into all of it's like everybody, because we do
Sure.
snap, stallion merch too. Everybody was complaining about all of the money to be into all of these incentives. And it's almost like, holy cow, like,
Sure, it gets expensive, no doubt. Like, for instance, like you start paying them in when they're weanlings. So if you start paying them in as weanlings and they don't run till they're a 4-year-old, I mean, you've got, what, $1,000 into them or 800 into them or whatever, and depending what all they're in, because Pink Buckle's 200 every year, Ruby, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, like that, $800 is a heck of a lot easier at 200 a year than 3,000 to get them paid in and then start making those $200 a year payments. And, yes, like it does get pricey. Like that's, right off the bat, like I know like every year right now with just what we have in the barn and, our numbers fluctuate all the time because buying and selling and, I have a broodmare that's due here in the next 2 weeks and things like that. So that number
I have a baby.
Yes, we are. um, those numbers fluctuate all the time. So it might be we have 800 for the year or we might have 2,800 for the year paying horses in. And you look at it and you're like, man, is it worth that? But business is a gamble. Like if you want to be good at it, you're going to gamble at some point. And I just look at it as that's one of those gambles because, you know, Pink, Ruby Buckle, like I'm pretty sure like it's like $100,000 per division in the open that pays out. Like it pays 20 holes. So like most of the time, like you should be able to get in there somewhere eventually to get that back.
Right.
I mean, there's always those people that unfortunately they fall in the cracks every time, but like the Pink and Ruby, I think it's a really good thing. I do think that it's brought money to the business and, has really kind of spiced things up and, like slot races have gotten really big in our area. And that's another thing. I mean, it's like $1,000 entry fee, but you might win 50,000 back. So yes, it's a gamble, but it's a gamble I'm willing to take because I know she's solid.
Well, and you probably make a better calculated gamble versus somebody like me. It would not be smart for me to be like, all right, well, I'm going to start barrel racing and let me go drop $1,000. It wouldn't be too smart for me to do it.
And again, I mean, like, I probably sound like arrogant, like, oh, I entered 5 of these. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, last year I ran her. It just so happened that, like, I had bought a slot and a client of ours had bought a slot and their horse wasn't measuring up. So her and I, like, did a partnership that, after, if I won whatever, like, it's a 50-50 split. Like, and she was good with that. And, the mare, she would have pulled a check, but I happened to catch a barrel. And the horse that I had in my slot, like, I rode like an absolute monkey because I ran her first and I didn't want to catch a barrel on him. So I played it safe and got by everything and fell in the crash. So, but like then the next day I came in and both horses were top 5 in the first division. So it's a gamble and like you got to get your mental game on straight when you start entering those things because you can quickly go down that rabbit hole of am I good enough or is my horse good enough or whatever. And you just got to go in and ride your ride.